Welcome to the I Now Pronounce You Divorced podcast, where we have three award-winning family law attorneys dive into intriguing topics like divorce, military divorce, custody and visitation, trust and estate planning, and all things family law. Join us as we provide a comprehensive viewpoint through the eyes of our experts and guests, aiming to educate and soothe our listeners. Get ready to tune in because I Now Pronounce You Divorced starts right now.
The collaborative law idea would not be to make sure that you get the spousal support that you're owed. That's not the collaborative law approach. The collaborative law approach is to try to get you all to meet in the middle to be done with it. So if collaborative law is something that you want to investigate, I think that having an uncontested divorce is amazing if it's something that people can do. But you should start out with working with somebody who only has your best interests in mind. Somebody who's ethically obligated to only have your best interests in mind. Because if you walk into a situation and say, look, I want to get X number of dollars in spousal support, child support, I want the house to be divided this way, that way, we can sit down and have honest conversations with you. Say, look, we can get you this here, we can get you that there. The reality of this idea is it's not really going to happen, but I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to see what the other side has to say. I will tell you what we see most often is people coming in and one person thinks it's going to be an uncontested divorce. And it is because the other person's not talking about it. So the one person's like, hey, I want to have an uncontested divorce. And the other person's like, sure, whatever. And well, I'm going to go hire an attorney to do this uncontested divorce. And the other person goes, sure, whatever. Because let's be honest, if you're divorcing somebody, it's not because you guys are loving each other. You're not getting along anymore. The relationship's broken down. So the communication is not always the best. And we have people come in, they hire us for uncontested divorces. And I always warn them, I'm like, yeah, we can start off with the uncontested idea, but we need to look more realistic. What are we going to do when the other side doesn't respond? And, when you're looking for this idea of an uncontested or collaborative divorce, I always advise people, I would shy away from people who advertise collaborative divorce, because that means they don't represent either one. That means that their reputation and their idea of a successful case is getting you to agree. It's not making sure you get what's best for you or what's best for your children or what's best for the other side. I would hire somebody that truly has your interest in mind, because two attorneys who aren't collaborative attorneys can still sit down and come to an agreement, but make sure everything is actually fair. Make sure your desires are met. Make sure the other side's desires are met. And what we generally see in these types of situations, having represented a lot of people who come from the collaborative divorce or attorney-led mediation, is, man, custody and visitation sections are written so bad, because by the time they get to custody and visitation, one party just agrees and says, look, it's just as the parties agree, right? Because the mediator, the collaborative divorce attorney, they're only trying to get an agreement. They're not trying to do what's best for children. So they will put down on a piece of paper as the parties agree. That means nothing, because if you guys can't agree, that means nothing happens. So, when you're looking at that, think about what the incentive behind the attorney is. For a collaborative or attorney mediator, the only incentive they have is to get you to agree. For an attorney that only represents your interests, the only incentive they have is to make sure that your interests are met.
Right. It always, you get one side that's like, I want to mediate, I want to keep it out of court. I want to be reasonable. I want to divide everything fairly. I want to do this. I want to do that. And, the first thing is, well, it takes two. So is the other side on the same page with you on all of these things, or even somewhat close, right? Because we don't want to put a whole bunch of time in having this collaborative approach and trying to negotiate a settlement if all we're going to get back is either no, or someone who's just going to completely ignore you and sit on their hands and say, well, I don't want this, so I'm not going to agree to anything. And now you've spent all this time and effort and energy trying to write an agreement, but it takes two. You got to have two people who are willing to come to the table and have that conversation. I've also found that the best preparation for a mediation is litigation, right? If you've gone to court and you've filed the right paperwork and you've met all your deadlines and you've done all the discovery and you have all of the information and you're in a good position procedure-wise, and you can walk into a mediation and say, I have everything. I have all of the bank statements. I understand all the value of all the assets, and we've got a trial date scheduled in 4 weeks. that's when you're going to have the most reasonable conversation, right? When both sides can come to the table and say, we're incentivized, there's time pressure on both sides, and we have all the information we need. It's really difficult to walk into a mediation when your client doesn't have access to all of the bank statements, or your client doesn't necessarily know about all the retirement accounts or something like that. And so sometimes you want to go to court just so you can get all the information you need, and then you can come back to mediation if it makes sense at that point, right? Which is, it's kind of counterintuitive to say, like, I want to mediate, but I have to litigate first. In order to get to the successful mediation, that's what I have to do. But otherwise, you walk out with a bad deal, or a kind of, like you said, like a meaningless deal. If you walk out with an agreement that doesn't have a fallback, that doesn't say, like, this is what the schedule is for custody and visitation, you can't enforce anything. And when the other side just says, well, I don't agree to that, you're out of luck, and you're kind of right back where you started. But now you've put in all this time and effort and energy. So
we've also spent money, right?
And,
I've talked to people before that, they come and hire us and they say, look, we were trying to settle out. And I'm like, okay, so how much did you spend? Well, I spent all this money having this separation agreement drafted. It's 23 pages. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful looking document. But I'm like, so what happened? Well, my attorney sent it to the other side. And then what? They didn't do anything. So what? So nothing happened. And when you're trying to choose an attorney, talking to a law firm, talking to an attorney, talking to an organization that is honest with you, right? Saying, look, we absolutely, if a divorce can be mediated out, we want that. But the reality is, we need to know what you're fighting over, right? We'll have to probably do discovery. We have to put deadlines on things. If we send a separation agreement, we tell the other side in 21 days, we're going to file a complaint for divorce. And because we keep our promises, we will file the complaint for divorce and start litigation. So you're really looking for people who don't try to paint you this rosy colored picture. I always tell people, people will call and I'll talk to them and they'll say, so what do you think about my case? And I said, well, we've been talking for 7 minutes or 8 minutes or however long we've been talking at that point in time. I'm like, if I made something up and told you what I thought about your case at this point in time, I would, one, be assuming almost everything else about your life, because now I'm assuming I know what the last however many years of your marriage entailed, all of your financial statements, everything that went wrong in your marriage, all the evidence that the other side's going to have. And I'm only doing that to get you to sign on the line to hire me as an attorney. To me, that's pretty wrong. And so when I talk to people, I will go through this. I'll say, look, what are you looking for? What are your goals? And very frequently we hear, I want an uncontested divorce. I want collaborative divorce. And so I talked to him. I said, yeah, we'd love to get you there. But the reality is, generally what we see is, in order to get to that point, we have to make some positive steps on the litigation front, right? The other side has to know that we're serious about what we're doing. And then once they know that we're serious, they will be incentivized to negotiate. And I've had people tell me, who are browsing law firms, say, well, that's not what so-and-so told me. And I said, well, we all do it differently. But for us, we actually want to get your case over with, right? I don't want, as much as I will like all of our clients, I don't want them to be clients forever. I want you to come in, get a resolution to your legal problem, and be able to move on with your life. We consider your time to be a part of the equation when we look at, how is a case going to progress? And I think anytime that you're trying to choose an attorney, anytime you would say, like, can my case be collaborative, or can my case be uncontested? They don't know. There's nobody you could talk to them for 5 hours. If they haven't talked to the other side, if they haven't seen the evidence of the case, if they haven't seen the bank accounts, the financial transactions, they are just guessing as much as anybody else whether or not your divorce can be uncontested.
Right. So, how important is a personality fit when you're choosing a divorce attorney? How essential is that in any part of this?
I think the personality fit is somewhat important. And the reason I say that is, you don't always want your best friend litigating for you, right? If you go in and you say, look, I really like this attorney, they're like my best friend, I can hold their hand, we go out for drinks, whatever, after work. I really like them. Sometimes the attorney has to be abhorrent to you. right? They have to do things that you didn't want to do. They have to be aggressive with your soon-to-be ex-spouse. They have to take hardline stances with the other side for the best benefit of you. So, as far as personality goes, I think it's important that you trust your attorney. That your attorney, the personality fit will be that your attorney communicates what he or she is going to do for you, communicates why, and they're open to answering questions. One of my favorite things when I represented clients was when they would say, well, why are we going to do that? Why can't we do it this other way? I loved talking to people about that. It didn't insult me as a practitioner to say, oh, well, you're questioning me? Absolutely not. No, I'd say, well, the reason that I'm thinking about doing it this way is because of X, Y, and Z. And they'd say, well, I heard or I had a friend that did it A, B, and C way. And I'd say, okay, tell me about it. I'm open. I'll listen. And then, sometimes in talking, maybe A, B, and C was not right for the client, but maybe we say, look, I understand, in talking through this with you, I see that maybe the goal that you said wasn't the goal that you really want. And I'll give a great example. I had a client one time who said, I want my soon-to-be ex-spouse to have nothing, no spousal support, no cut of the house, no cut of retirement, no cars, no nothing. I said, okay, I guess that's what we'll do. And walked into court and did it. And surprisingly, that's not a common outcome. Don't get me wrong. You're just a very bad soon-to-be ex-spouse on the other side. Walked out of court, and my client was sitting there weeping because my client didn't actually want to watch that happen. My client still lingered some feelings towards the ex-spouse. And I remember sitting there watching that, and I was like, man, he told me what his goals were. And I met the goals, right? But this isn't what my client actually wanted at all. And so I think, having somebody that's willing to allow you to question them. And I say allow because, sometimes attorneys have pretty big egos, undeservedly so. But, allow you to say, hey, I got questions about this. Let me just ask some questions and not get defensive like, oh, well, I don't know why you're asking me questions. For attorneys that do that, I tell them to grow up. Everybody knows something and we could all learn something from everyone.
Right. Yeah, I think personality fit, I think you hit the nail on the head. It comes down to your ability to trust your attorney. You don't have to be best friends forever. You don't have to, go out to happy hour together or hang out on the weekends. And they're also not there to be your therapist necessarily, right? So you're not just having like venting sessions about your frustrations and your feelings and everything that you're going through. Sometimes we do have to kind of carve that out of the attorney-client relationship and say, look, I'm here for you on the legal side. And like, I empathize with you. However, I can't also be your therapist. I can't also, serve in that role. So personality fit, I think as long as you can trust in what your attorney is telling you and you can take their advice and you can follow their recommendations and, go with what they're telling you needs to happen as part of your case, then that's the personality fit that you need, right? Not necessarily to be best friends forever. All right. Well, this has been great. As far as our second in our I Now Pronounce You Divorced podcast. So if you have a topic that you want to hear us talk about, please get in touch. Like us, subscribe. We want to hear from you. Thanks so much. See you again next week.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. If you found this episode helpful and you want more informational content, please be sure to subscribe and join us on all major social media platforms, including YouTube. Stay connected for more exciting updates and tips.